Hi, welcome to Senior Moments Successful Aging. I'm Mary Beals-Luedtka, your host. I'm the Director for Area Agency on Aging, NACOG, and you can reach me at toll-free number 877-521-3500. Senior Moments Successful Aging is co-produced with the Division of Lifelong Learning in Yavapai College. So from Yavapai College, the co-producer is Connie Del Castillo, and you can reach her at 928-717-7755. And from NACOG Area Agency on Aging, the co-producer is Allie Bateman, and you can reach her at that toll-free number, once again, 877-521-3500. And today, I'm excited to introduce you to one of my staff, Lita Nelson. Hi, Lita.
Hi, Mary. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to have you here. So what exactly is your title now?
I am the Family Caregiver Program Coordinator.
Right. So when we talk about family caregiver, what does that mean?
Family caregivers it's a huge definition. It could be a neighbor, a friend, a church member, a community member, of course, fathers and, even daughters and sons and cousins, anybody
That's taking care of
a
somebody
loved
else.
one.
Okay.
Yes. It doesn't have to be family. It can be, anybody else.
So it's just a term that's used. So before we get too much into that, I want to talk about you a little bit. So who is Lita? Where were you born?
Well, I was born in Tuba City. So I'm an Arizona native, and I just love Arizona.
So, and you are Navajo.
I am full Navajo, and, I really identify with my culture.
Yes. And that is a rare thing, to be not only, you're an Arizona native, you're Navajo, and you also have a beautiful daughter.
I do, and she is 7 years old. Her name is Savannah. We have so much fun together. She's at the age where she loves to explore, so she likes to ask so many questions. And
I love that.
I learn a lot as well.
It's fun when they start teaching us, isn't it?
Yes.
It's almost from the beginning, I think.
Yeah.
So in a way, you're a family caregiver as a mother,
Yeah, that's true.
So, and where did you go to school?
I went to high school in Flagstaff, so I'm an Eagle. I went to ASU undergrad, but I didn't stay there because it's way too hot. And then I finished over in University of New Mexico with my multidisciplinary bachelor's degree.
Excellent. Well, we're really graced with your presence at the Area Agency on Aging because you really have a passion for what you do. And that's what we're going to really talk about today is the Family Caregiver Program, which really came about the year 2000 is when it started. But you came on board a few years ago. And so, give us a little rundown is what does it do? What is it all about?
Well, the Family Caregiver Program is, we are tasked with identifying family caregivers, helping family caregivers identify as family caregivers. A lot of times when you say, are you a caregiver? People think, well, I'm not paid. I don't work in a facility. I don't work, full-time as a caregiver. That's kind of what their definition of a family caregiver is. And we say, well, you're a family caregiver if you check in on somebody, how are you? Are you eating enough? Are you being taken care of? Or, if you notice a neighbor that's just struggling and you try to help them anyway. So we, as the Family Caregiver Support Program, kind of help with self-identification of what a family caregiver is. And then we come in with all our services and programs, which is the fun part because building the program has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it needed some building, because there's so many facets to it. So one of them I know is you talked about support. So let's talk about the support groups that you do.
Sure. Yeah, we have support groups all over northern Arizona, which is a beautiful thing. We have one in Snowflake that meets twice a month. We have one in Flagstaff that meets once a month. We have one in Yarnell that meets at least once a month, and they move the group around, so you have to, kind of connect with the facilitator. We have one in Verde Valley Medical Center, and they meet every week on Friday. We started one in Prescott, so there's one in Prescott, and that meets once a month as well. So there's a number of them out there.
So if they wanted to know where a support group is closest to you, you could call the toll-free number.
Yeah, call the toll-free number, just reach out, go to the website. We try to keep an accurate and updated listing of all the support groups out there. So
good. So there's support groups. And so what happens in a support group?
normally what happens is, unfortunately, caregivers come until they're at the crisis point where they feel like they're burdened and they can't handle it anymore. What do I do? My loved one is up every night. I'm not sleeping, or they're asking me the same questions all the time. I'm going crazy. Or, how do I pay for services? How do I find programs? What do I do? And it's usually at a point where there's some mental health issues, depression, isolation, maybe some anxiety from just, day in and day out of full-time care. And, when caregivers first start, they don't realize how much it entails.
And a lot of times when we become a family caregiver, we don't sign up for it.
Right.
We become one.
Right.
When our loved one becomes ill.
That's so true. And most people start off with small tasks. And eventually the responsibilities just keep growing and growing, and all of a sudden you're working part-time, you're calling into work, you're doing the doctor's appointments, you're probably at risk of losing your job. There's your financial security, what happens to your family. So there's so much that impacts a family caregiver.
When you're talking about starting out with those little tasks, I know that more and more and more family caregivers are asked to do medical things like catheter care, wound care. So what do we do to help them with that?
Sure.
We do some classes, right?
We do. We have a caregiver workshop called Activities of Daily Life that runs 5 weeks. We meet once a week for 2 hours. And we cover a number of different activities of daily living, which are, bathing, feeding, all the basic activities. And we help caregivers learn, a different skill set. How do you change a person while they're laying in bed? Or how do you change a brief? How do you make sure there's no sores? How do you do skincare prevention? How do you move somebody without hurting them or hurting yourself, really? And then just, a lot of self-care, a lot of the caregiver skill set really increases in those classes. We also have the Caregiver Education Series, which is more of the warm handoff with partner agencies. We'll do, All-Tex. We'll cover a lot about that because that's, a question.
And All-Tex is?
Arizona Long-Term Care System, which is, it's a task to get on that. So a lot of caregivers, when they're overwhelmed, they don't really know where to start. So we cover a lot of financial literacy with family caregivers, as well as, who are the supports in their own communities. So we really engage our community partners with Area Agency on Aging, ask those partners to come in and help us run those series. And it's a warm handoff for the caregivers, and they say, oh, I want to talk to you about services. So there's that connection.
And it kind of takes a village, doesn't it?
It sure does. Yeah.
We can't do it all by ourselves at the Area Agency on Aging. You mentioned that it was 5 weeks, 2 hours, and I can imagine a caregiver right now going, I don't have time to do that. So there's another aspect to that so that we can help them come to the classes.
Right. So we do have respite. The respite program is, there are qualifications and screenings for that, but if that's something that you're interested in, that's it's worth a call to the 877 number to kind of see if that's something that will work for you. And then we can give you some hours. You can come to the class, you can meet other caregivers where they're at, where you're at, and then we can kind of talk about what services you need and how you can benefit from a lot of the supports that the Family Caregiver Support Program has. And a lot of people are surprised, they haven't heard of us or they don't know that we exist. And it's like, well, here's the Family Caregiver Support Program, but there's also Area Agency on Aging, but there's also NACOG, Northern Arizona Council of Governments. So there's a lot of built-in supports for each other.
Right. And so, again, let's go back to respite and explain that a little bit more so there's a clear understanding of what respite means.
Respite is a short break from caregiving duties, responsibilities, to take a break, take time. You can either come to a class or you can go into another room and sleep. go shopping, have lunch, get a haircut, go to a doctor's appointment.
Whatever you want.
Whatever you want. You'll have a qualified caregiver in there that's been vetted and screened by one of our service providers, and they'll be there with your loved one, keeping them company, helping them with what they need. If they need a bath while you're away, they'll give them a bath or a shower. They'll, just provide that companionship.
So really it's whatever the caregiver needs from that respite worker.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah. So it's whatever you need. So you can kind of customize that package around it. And it's non-medical though.
Non-medical, yes.
Right.
So caregivers won't be able to do wound care or anything like that. So,
okay. But still, I think it's really important.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I found in my own family is that my sister who cared for my mother never wanted to admit that she needed help.
Right.
And I think that's kind of permeates through the whole caregiving. Everybody and I'm sure you see that with folks that finally come to see you.
Yes, yes. And unfortunately, when we finally get those calls, it really is crisis time, and we're working backwards. We're trying to find, what works best. A lot of times I tell caregivers, just call me, we'll talk, let's talk it out. It's usually not as crazy as, they may think it is. And, at the end of the phone call, and the phone call can be 5 minutes, it can be 20 minutes, it could be an hour. But at the end of that phone call, they have a better idea of where they're at and what supports that, might be in place already. Other community partners they didn't know about. Palliative care is a big one. Everybody thinks that it's only hospice.
But there's other alternatives.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, the best thing to do is call the toll-free number.
Yes, always.
And figure out where to go from there. And I know that starting at the toll-free number, the 877-521-3500, our intake specialists can help folks figure out what it is they're looking for and guide them to you.
Yes.
And then you're trained as a caregiver case manager so that you can help them through that crisis. And I'm hoping that the folks that watch this will reach out sooner than the crisis time.
Right, yes.
Because that's ideal.
Right. And in one of the series, we do help with pre-planning. Do you have your POA? Do you have the bank's paperwork? Because, a lot of times people don't understand that even if you have financial power of attorney, you can't access a bank's information for your loved one if you don't have the bank's documents. They don't, unfortunately, recognize those legal powers of attorney. So you really have to be careful of how that's all set up. And just to make sure the pre-arrangements are made. And if there's family dynamics, what does that look like? So there's so much to family caregivers. It's, it really encompasses a lot of pre-planning once we get over the initial crisis.
Mm-hmm. And especially if there's a diagnosis of dementia. If it's mild dementia, you better get it going right now. Right. Because once dementia sets in and they're no longer competent, you can't do any more legal work.
Right, that's true.
Other than going to court and getting guardianship and conservatorship, which is then going through that whole court process, and which takes a lot longer. Mm-hmm. So another thing that you do is your symposium.
Yes. So in November of 2017, we started the Family Caregiver Symposiums. That was kind of in honor of National Family Caregiver Support Month. Caregiver. And we decided now that we would like to roll those out every so often throughout the year. So we are planning a few throughout northern Arizona to just kind of keep that momentum going. We do have many people that attend, up anywhere from 30 to 40 to 50 people that attend those meetings. We have speakers, we provide lunch, thanks to some sponsors that we, engage. We have, the warm handoff. Caregivers learn a lot, and they always come back with, I wish I had known about this. And then really explaining what, hospice does, because it's not just, the 6-month end of life diagnosis, but it could be other parts, the whole support system of that. So there's that. And then we also have, of course, the financial health and so many other facets. And we build the symposium agenda based on what caregivers ask us for. And a lot of it is responding to what the communities are asking for. It's if they need more, information on respite, we could do something on respite. So it really is a response to what, caregivers are wanting.
So do you get that through evaluations from your presentations and the classes,
Yes.
and also you kind of track the phone calls?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So the nice thing about the symposiums is that we do have a little bit of a post survey, and caregivers really give us a lot of feedback. And it's not, for the symposium, it's not just open to caregivers, it's also open to professionals. We want professionals to kind of get an idea of what caregivers are going through and just how much it really, can change somebody's life to care for somebody. And caregivers are not alone because they're a part of over 40 million people in the country now that are family caregivers. And they provide almost they provide so many millions of dollars worth of unpaid care.
It's billions, isn't it?
It is.
It's billions and billions of dollars worth of care, which is why the Family Caregiver Act finally was, that title was put in the Older Americans Act in 2000. And, I know that just recently we did get a boost in funding.
Yes.
So we're looking forward to that coming through to the state of Arizona so that we can add some more to our Family Caregiver program and hopefully some help for you as you're out there running around 4 counties trying to do all this by yourself. And I know one of the things you're also trying to do is streamline that respite program so it's easier to access.
Yes. So what we've been really working on is, of course, we want to track usage and authorization. A lot of times with our service providers, and this is a national issue, service delivery is really impacted by the shortage of caregivers. And, we are seeing this nationally. It was a big topic at ASA 2018. And, they're speaking of how can we help with the caregiver shortage, still meet all the needs of the silver tsunami. And it's a challenge. It's a real big challenge. Right now we have wait lists. We have units that we can utilize, but we don't have caregivers.
We don't have caregivers.
So
the silver tsunami is the baby boomers.
Yes.
We're here. The silver tsunami is here.
It is.
10,000 persons are turning 65 every day. So it has arrived. And so there is a crisis of caregivers out there willing to go into that field.
Right.
There's an issue of pay.
Yes.
But there's the issue of pay of a lot of things right now. We've got all the teachers issues that are going on right now that are very real. But we're having the same issues with caregivers. And, how do we track folks to come into this field and be part of taking care of our elders? And I know that is an issue.
Right.
Meanwhile, if we can support our family caregivers, I think last year in Arizona alone, it was $6.7 billion that family unpaid caregivers provided for Arizonans.
Right.
That's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. And we do see that in communities. And, we are looking at ways to work closely with communities so they support their own communities as well. And knowing that the caregiver shortage is an issue and that, we do have respite, but it really depends on the caregiver shortage.
Right.
If we can get those delivered.
Right. And then also I think another aspect is training employers. For years and years, it took a long time for employers to understand that childcare piece.
Right.
But now we've got the sandwich generation, which means they're taking care of children and they're taking care of their elders. Yes. And then how do they maintain? And so you also have to look in that cost of caregiving, that loss of revenue and that loss of jobs. And when you look at policy and what's going on in Washington, and when you're looking at cuts here and there, who does it affect the most? It affects older women.
Right.
Because 9 times out of 10, it's a woman who ends up being the caregiver and putting less into her Social Security system so that when she retires, she has less retirement.
Right.
Then she's got less, and she's got more likelihood of being in poverty.
Right.
And then they cut programs, and she's the one that suffers. And so that's something also that we look at overall, too, is that whole piece of poverty, which NACOG, again with community services, tries to then provide support services for that.
Right. And I think, that's really amazing how much work the care coordinators put into working with the communities and then identifying those that are really in need of services. And then working closely with, Central Intake and my program and other programs to get those individuals to those services that they need. So, the care coordination team or case management team, really has an integral role with Area Agency on Aging.
So who teaches the activities of daily living classes?
We have a facilitator through Northern Arizona University. Her name is Dorothy Dunn. She's a family practitioner, family nurse practitioner, and she's also a family caregiver. She's a
I didn't realize that part.
long distance family caregiver.
Okay.
Her father lives in Rhode Island, so there's a lot of stuff that comes with that as well. So she is able to speak family caregiver to family caregivers.
And I bet that's received very well. I've never had the chance to go to one of the classes, but as an old nurse myself, I know that it was hard for my sister because she didn't know how to do those little pieces that just come naturally to me because I've been in the field.
Right.
But that isn't the case for everybody.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
I think it's especially important too, and I'm not trying to be sexist, but men often have a hard time when they're put into that role as they haven't been in a caregiver role before.
Yeah. And they're the first ones to tell you, I don't need help.
Really?
They're the first ones to say, I'm good, I'm okay. And then, yeah,
And then
when they realize that, they need help, we're there for them anyway, So,
Yeah.
and it's pretty amazing too with men, how much care they really do give to their parents.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's, it's really good to see that part of it as well with the men.
It's just that technicality, like you're saying. Trying to make a bed with somebody in it is not as easy as it sounds, but it's also very simple with just a couple little techniques.
Right, exactly.
Just
yes.
a couple little things.
Yeah.
And I think skincare too is something that people forget about. If somebody's in bed for a long time,
Right.
if you don't turn them and rub those little areas that you're bony prominent, your
Yeah.
shoulders, your buttocks, your knees, your ankles, they
Yeah.
start to turn red. And if they've turned red, already underneath that area, you're starting to build a bed sore.
Right, exactly.
And people don't realize that. They're like, oh, it's just a little red. Oh, no, that's a warning. It's a warning sign.
Yeah, and that can become a full-on wound. It can go straight to the bone. We've seen some worst-case scenarios where
I
they
have too.
end up in the hospital. And in a case where you're trying to keep people at home for as long as possible, something as simple as changing somebody or moving somebody every so often makes a big difference. Because
Makes a huge difference.
if you don't, they could end up in a skilled nursing facility and with other health problems. So there's so much that goes with it.
And also, I think another thing that is helpful in the classes is the nutrition piece.
Yes.
Unfortunately, Arizona is 15th from the bottom in malnutrition.
Oh, wow.
I know. And so, which I really hate, and I think we're trying to do more and more education on that, and family caregivers need to understand that it's great. My mother only wanted peanut butter in the morning and toast and coffee. That's all she wanted. But if they lose their lean body mass, and they don't get that protein from whatever protein source they want, some peanut butter is got some protein source, but then they lose their ability to heal.
Right.
And, those are things that you might not know, off the cuff.
Right. Yeah. And we have built in, nutrition,
Right.
Exercise, all this, not only self-care for the caregiver, but also care for their loved one, trying to get those nutrients in them, trying to share that responsibility. One of the tidbits that Dr. Dunn shares is that if you're serving somebody with dementia on a white plate and you have fettuccine, they're not going to see fettuccine in the plate. They're going to see an empty plate.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
use
yeah.
colorful, utensils so they're able to see it and they can actually respond to it as food.
And also, another tidbit is, after a while, if you give them too many choices, they won't pick.
That's true. That's true.
Sorry, my sinuses.
Oh, that's okay. And with dementia too, it's harder to try to engage somebody with eating.
Yeah.
Because they're not interested. They don't want food. It's like, oh, I'd rather do something else.
Yeah, I'm not hungry.
No, I'm not hungry. No.
They've lost it, and they also lose a lot of their taste.
They do. Yes.
So you got to make it something pretty.
Yes.
The only thing my mom wants to eat is chocolate.
Oh.
That's it.
I don't blame her.
Make sure it's dark chocolate, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
So it's all those little pieces make up all the things that you need for being a good caregiver. But I'm glad you brought it. Why don't you talk a little bit about self-care?
Sure. Self-care is, a lot of caregivers are running, working, always doing something for their loved one. Always, it's, client-centered, loved one-centered at that point, where they're at their doctor's appointments. They're, changing them, helping them, all of that. But then the caregiver forgets, maybe I need my annual. Maybe I need my, my physical checkup. And I don't get that. And then something happens, stress levels, it's a comorbidity for certain things. So your stress level, you're isolated. So there comes depression and anxiety, and they're married. So then, you have a whole host of different problems. And by the time you finally make it to a doctor's appointment, it might not be good news. So we try to remind caregivers, take care of yourself. It's a lot easier said than done. And, caregivers are like, oh, I don't have time for that. I am constantly running around trying to take care of my loved one. How am I going to take care of myself? That seems selfish. They feel guilty. There's a lot of caregiver guilt.
There is a lot of caregiver guilt, but isn't that why I always use the old thing? That's why they tell you to put your oxygen mask on first.
Yes.
Before you put it on the child.
Right.
Because if you run out of oxygen, what's going to happen to the child?
Right.
It's the same thing with caregiving.
It is.
Over and over, if something happens to you, what's going to happen to your loved one?
Right.
They're going to have to go into an institution. There's nobody else to take care of them.
Yes.
And you have to take the time to take care of yourself. And I think the statistics are staggering, are they not? That oftentimes the caregiver dies before the person that they're taking care of.
Right, especially when the needs of the care recipient or the loved one increases.
Yeah.
The caregiver stress level and burden increases. So, a lot of times family caregivers predecease their loved ones, and we have seen it. We see that case, and it's to the point where when they reached out in crisis, and we weren't able to do, enough as what they could have done before. The other thing too is the Family Caregiver Support Program is one of the programs with Area Agency on Aging that's participating in a governor's grant right now. And so we're delivering 2 other programs. One is mental health first aid for senior, for older adults with later life issues. And the other one is the WISE program, or the Wellness Initiative for Senior Education. And those programs are coming out in right now Yavapai County, but looking at expansion. So, those programs are very helpful. For mental health first aid, we really do get into a lot of discussion, and that is such, heavy topic matter for both facilitator and participants. So we have some meaningful discussions around mental health and crisis and how to avert, and how to get help. So,
and I think that the other thing, just a little word that I'd like our viewers to think about is, if you know someone who's caregiving, don't ask them if they need help. Just go give it to them.
Right.
Just show up at the door and say, I'm going to do this for you, because 9 times out of 10 they're not going to say, I need help. So, if you need more information about the caregiver program, get a hold of Lita Nelson. You can call her at the toll-free number, 877-521-3500. Lita, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. Besides, I get to see you more, because we're always at different places and different offices, and I don't get to see you very often. So thank you very much, and thank you for joining us today on Senior Moments Successful Aging. I'm Mary Beals-Luedtka. Until next time.